Many people say they like the Isle of Wight because it just doesn't seem to change. Some even claim it's like stepping back in time to the Britain of 50 years ago.
But how true is that? Well, tonight we get the chance to find out, thanks to a film made in the 1940s and a young photographer who set out to compare now with then.
Richard Jones has more in the last visits to parts of the hidden south.
A chip off the old rock was filmed on the Isle of Wight as the Second World War was coming to an end and was released in 1948. Made by the director Harold Bame, it was one of the earliest travel films made about the island and was shown in cinemas as a short before the main feature. 60 years on, film student Richard Howe came across it and was inspired to set out on a mission. He wanted to compare the island he's known all his life with the island of the 1940s.
Well, I found it absolutely fascinating to see the island in different eyes. You know, this was just after the war and people were recovering from the war. And it was just wonderful to see all this old history around on the place. And I wanted to try and find that to see whether much had changed.
So Richard toured the island with camera in hand to visit many of the places featured in the film, to see how they look now. He went to villages and towns and to tourist spots.
After doing the matching shots, I found that hardly anything on the island had changed. You know, a few businesses have come and gone, but aside from that, all the buildings have stayed the same. The island has kept a lot of its history, which is a wonderful charm and draws in the tourists year after year.
Richard did have some problems. In Ventnor, trees had grown to such a height that he struggled to match this view across the town. And he encountered one problem that the filmmakers of the 1940s didn't have: the car. They dominate many of Richard's shots in a way which they didn't in a chip off the old rock.
You see about 3 or 4 cars for the whole of the island, whereas today the roads are always jam-packed, especially during the rush hours. And, you know, back then people were still going around, some cases, by horse and carriage.
Richard got his biggest surprise at Blackgang Chine, where he found a group of gnomes filmed in the 1940s had hardly changed at all, apart from a few spots painted on the mushrooms they're gathered around. The film features the men of the Bembridge lifeboat station and their vessel, the Jessie Lum. They staged a demonstration for Harold Bame and his crew. Many of those men served on the Bembridge lifeboat throughout the Second World War and were responsible for saving dozens of lives out at sea. The Jessie Lum left service in the 1960s, but the tradition of saving lives of mariners in danger continues at Bembridge to this day. Apart from the pictures, the glory of the film is the commentary. It's voiced by Ronnie Waldman and Doris Arnold, 2 popular radio stars of the war years. They weren't a married couple, but the script was written to make it sound as if they were.
I'm told that some model yacht owners pay more attention to their little boats than they do to their little wives.
Oh, really? It must be rather comforting for them to come home to a little boat and expect you to have the supper ready.
And there are passages that you simply wouldn't hear today, ones that are wonderfully of their time.
Ah, wives of the future learn how to use a rolling pin.
In self-defense, of course. And they learn how to cook a great variety of dishes. The man who marries a Newport County schoolgirl will be well fed.
And not fed up like so many others, you mean?
The world has changed out of all recognition since the 1940s, but it's comforting to know that the Isle of Wight at least has retained much of its historic charm. Richard Jones for Meridian Tonight.
I just love watching all the archive. It's fantastic. And if you'd like to see more, minus the motor cars of a chip off the old rock, there are edited highlights on our website, itvlocal.com/Meridian.